Out of all weapons of choice out there, would anyone think of deciding on a cobra to commit a planned murder? Wait, what? A cobra as a murder weapon? What would be the precise logistics involved in pulling this off? Buy or catch this venomous snake, keep it safely contained, release and hurl it at the intended victim at an opportune moment, hoping its bite would do the job. Then blame the death on the cobra that somehow slithered its way into the scene of crime. Would this work? Well, it might possibly work in the regions where deaths caused by snake bites are not uncommon. Like in India, for example. One man certainly thought he would get away with it scot-free. Did he? Let's find out. Uttara, 25-year-old wife of Suraj Kumar, was recovering at her parents' home in Kerala, southwestern coastal state of India, after being unlucky enough to be bitten 3 months earlier by a Russell Viper, a highly venomous snake responsible for causing thousands of deaths in India every year. The snake bite put her in the hospital for 52 days, and she had to undergo 3 painful surgeries to her leg. On the night of 6 May 2020, she fell into deep sleep after drinking a glass of fruit juice her husband brought her. The next morning, her mother found her lying motionless in bed, and was rushed to the hospital, but she was pronounced dead. An autopsy found 2 pairs of puncture wounds on her left forearm, and blood samples revealed the presence of cobra venom and sedative drugs. Finding 2 snake bites in 3 months too much of a coincidence, her family turned to the police, claiming that Suraj had been with their daughter the night before her death, that he had been hounding her for money, and after her death, proposed to take custody of their 1-year-old son, provided that his in-laws give him financial support. Suraj was not really worried. How could he be blamed for his wife's death caused by a cobra bite? Even if the police suspected foul play, there was no way he could be held accountable for what a snake did, he thought. Kerala police turned out to be surprisingly thorough and meticulous in their investigation. Despite the absence of any direct evidence, they built a watertight case based on meticulous medical, forensic, and scientific evidence on snake bites, conducted snake bite tests to show difference between a natural bite and an induced bite, and charged Suraj with murder, attempt to murder, and destruction of evidence. According to the investigation results, Suraj, who worked for a local bank, illegally bought a Russell Viper from Shivarkavu Kumar, a snake catcher, for 10,000 rupees, the equivalent of about $130, in February 2020. After drilling a hole in a plastic container to let in the air for the snake to breathe, he hid it under a stack of firewood in a shed at his home. On 27 February, he released the snake on the staircase landing of his home and told his wife to go and fetch his mobile phone from upstairs, but contrary to his expectation, the viper, instead of hissing and biting his wife, remained coiled on the landing, giving her time to shout for help. He was forced to pick it up with a stick and carry it outside, where he put it back in the container. He made his second attempt on the night of the 2nd of March, lacing his wife's pudding with sedatives and releasing the viper in the bedroom while she slept. This time, the snake attacked. Uttara woke up screaming in pain and clutching her leg, where she had been bitten, and Suraj caught and threw the snake out of the window. After 3 skin transplants, she returned to her parents' home to recuperate from her injury, while her husband stayed behind at home with their 1-year-old son. He spent his time trawling the internet, learning about snake handling and snake venom, and watching YouTube videos on venomous snakes. He also went around telling his friends that his wife was plagued by dreams in which she was cursed by the wrath of snakes and destined to die of a snake bite. He then bought a spectacled cobra, one of the most venomous snakes in the world, from the snake catcher for 7,000 rupees, or about $87, put it in a plastic container, and starved it for more than 10 days. Carrying the cobra in a bag, he went to his in-laws, and on the night of 6 May drugged his wife, waited until she fell asleep, then dropped the snake on top of his sleeping wife. Instead of attacking her, the cobra slithered away, so he picked it up and hurled it at his wife, but it again slithered off without biting her. Third time is a charm, they say. For his third attempt at murdering his wife, he held the snake by its trademark hood and pressed its head near his wife's left arm. The agitated cobra bit her twice with the fangs at the front of its mouth, then slithered off to a shelf in the room, its job done. So why was he so desperate to kill his wife of only 2 years? Uttara's parents wanted their daughter, who had a learning disability, well taken care of, and gifted Suraj with 98 sovereigns of gold, a car, and 500,000 rupees as dowry when he married their daughter on 26 March 2018. Uttar's father even gave the couple 8,000 rupees every month, but his son-in-law's parents became increasingly greedier, demanding that Uttar's parents pay for their own household appliances, furniture, renovation work, a car, and even admission fees for an MBA course for Suraj's sister. Suraj also grew dissatisfied with his wife's learning disability, and his parents subjected Uttar to mental and physical abuse, all the while bullying her for more money. Uttar finally had enough and decided to seek a divorce. Suraj soon began to plot her death, fearing that he would have to return the dowry if they divorce, and search for ways to make it look like an accident. After her death, Uttar's parents reported most of the jewelry they gave to their daughter during her wedding missing, and the police found out that Uttar's bank locker, which she shared with her husband, had been opened on the 2nd of March, just days before her death. Later, the police discovered 38 sovereigns of gold, buried in 2 packets, near his house, where he lived with his parents. Suraj was also found to have taken out a life insurance policy on his wife a few months before her death. So how did the investigators prove her death was not an accident? First, the husband's phone search history revealed extensive online research on venomous snakes, which began about a year after his marriage. He first researched vipers, after which his wife was bitten by a viper, then moved on to cobras and his wife was bitten by a cobra, strengthening the investigators' suspicions. Uttar was bitten by a rustled viper on the first floor of her home after she first saw it on the staircase landing, but experts said it was all but impossible for terrestrial vipers to navigate smooth tile to the first floor on their own, meaning someone must have placed it there. Then, there is the question of how the 1.5-meter-long cobra that bit her could have found its way into her bedroom. Cobras can raise themselves vertically only to 1/3 of their length, meaning it could have raised itself only to around 50 centimeters, not high enough to enter her room through the windows, and the air-conditioned room had been tightly closed with very little gap between the door and the floor. Uttar had been fatally bitten late at night, allegedly in her sleep. But cobras are active between 5 and 8 p.m., after which they usually remain inactive and do not strike without provocation. Another crucial clue was the fang widths of the 2 bites on the victim's body. The fang width of a fully grown cobra ranges between 1 to 1.6 centimeters. However, the fang widths of both bites on her body measured more than 2 centimeters. An expert testified in court that the fang width increases when a bite is induced by holding the cobra's head, applying pressure, and thus expanding its upper jaws. To prove this, the investigating team conducted a dummy test with a real cobra and recorded it as evidence. Using a dummy similar in size to the victim, they tied a piece of chicken to the dummy's hand and released the cobra on top of the dummy. The cobra, however, made no attempt to bite the dummy and crawled down to the ground. As experts said, cobras do not usually bite without provocation, and they bite only moving objects after displaying such defensive mechanisms as raising their hood and hissing. The team provoked the cobra into biting the chicken twice and succeeded only after numerous attempts. The next step was holding the cobra by its head and inducing 2 bites on the chicken. The fang width of the 2 natural bites was 1.7 centimeters, whereas that of the induced bites measured 2 and 2.4 centimeters respectively. In its over 450-page judgment, the court ruled that the prosecution conclusively proved the victim had sustained not natural, but induced cobra bites, which ultimately caused her death, and on 13 October 2021, sentenced the accused to 10 years of rigorous imprisonment for poisoning, 7 years of imprisonment for destruction of evidence, and double life imprisonment for murder and for attempt to murder, as well as a total fine of 585,000 rupees, describing this crime as diabolic, ghastly, brutal, and heinous. Although the prosecution sought the death penalty, the court decided on life imprisonment considering the accused's young age and lack of criminal history. In June 2020, Suraj's father was arrested on charges of destroying evidence and hiding 38 sovereigns of gold. And in August 2020, both his mother and sister were arrested on charges of conspiracy, domestic violence, and destruction of evidence and later released on bail. Although Uttar's case may be rare in the choice of cobra as a murder weapon, it is just one of countless dowry-related deaths in India. Practice of dowry has its roots in medieval India, when parents gave gifts in the form of cash and other goods to their daughters to ensure their financial security after marriage. But it evolved into a transfer of durable goods, cash and real or movable property to the brides-in-laws as a condition of marriage. It became such a major factor in violence against women that India outlawed the practice of paying dowries in 1961. But it still remains widely prevalent, An average of more than 7,000 deaths caused by harassment related to dowry are recorded each year in India, with about 20 women dying every day, either driven to take their own lives or murdered by their husbands and in-laws, who even set them on fire so they can blame the death as a cooking accident. But experts believe the actual figures to be much higher. Satya Naresh, who set up a website called I Don't Want Dowry in 2006, has been trying to convince men of India to do away with a custom he sees as one of the country's worst social evils. He calls for more active government action, saying, "It's no good making dowry illegal without working to make it something Indians are ashamed of accepting." Despite his modest goal of getting 100,000 sign-ups by 2020, he has managed only 10,000 by 2021 in the world's most populated country of more than 1.4 billion people. As he concedes, it is very hard to uproot a centuries-old tradition. What do you think would be effective ways to combat the harms of the deeply rooted practice of giving dowry?